So I've been delving into the storm and winning a lot and losing occasionally, but learning on each map. Against the Storm is great and offers a ton of fantastic dynamic gameplay, but some of the things are less obvious than others, and that's where I mean to help you out. These are the 7 big mistakes that I made and how I learned from them. And also, as a note, I'm not a super pro at the game quite yet, but these are things that I picked up early on and I corrected that have helped me win more matches. So let's get into it. Okay, first things first, one of the more important things that I've learned in my time in this game is managing the queen's impatience. While yes, this is obvious, I would suggest thinking about her anger a bit more strategically in your approach. When you are getting your orders periodically, it may seem like the perfect goal to just rush them. In fact, I would spend most of my time only prioritizing orders rather than the other ways to gain positive reputation. Other ways that include like gaining excessive resolve with your population or sending some of the resources that you find back to the Citadel. Sometimes also you get a bad roll with both of your order options. Sometimes they are just crap. Using these ulterior methods to gain reputation can help significantly. And also if they're used at the right moment, they can keep the queen off your back just long enough to save your settlement from being revoked. I sometimes find myself sitting on an order and not putting any points into it quite yet because I want to save it for later. But the idea here is just don't blindly chase every order you get. Take your time. Speaking of resource packs that you find, one of the most overlooked things that I did early on was not prioritizing the caches that I found in Glades. My early resource packs in the Glades were spent sending the resources back to the Citadel, which is great and all, but those resources early on probably would have been a lot more beneficial to move my settlement forward, more so than the reputation gain. A lot of the time they would be just really nice things to have, like more food or more fuel, which you were still establishing as you are getting into the mid-game as setting up your resource lines. Later in the game, the resources become significantly less valuable because typically we have multiple ways to generate them from either Glades or the trading posts or what have you. This is where I'd recommend sending them back to the Citadel towards the mid to late game. Get some amber, get closer to victory, but early on, maybe the resources will be better spent within your camp. Speaking of amber, I cannot stress how many times I didn't build a trading post until mid to late game, even when I needed it much earlier on. The reason being is that you can purchase rare materials early on that can help alleviate some of the pressure from other sources. I would run into a glade and have a bad luck draw with no food resources found inside, and then the town would start getting upset because they were hungry. Some quick exchanged food goods from the trading post to keep them happy long enough until I could remedy the situation would have been pivotal. Having a trading post is a moderate early investment, but great effect over the course of your playthrough. Then even better is that if you have sent resource caches back to the Citadel once or twice, chances are you are going to have some amber ready to sell. Easy peasy. Now, about keeping your villagers happy. Good gracious, I feel like one of the biggest things that I overlooked in my initial playthrough in Against the Storm is focusing on the population's resolve. They can of course fluctuate and get pissed off during the storm, which that just happens, but just having a few changes added into my settlement really could make a big difference. The biggest takeaway here is that I would have a lot of resources ready to go, and I just wouldn't look to create happier people by giving them either specific food, leisure, religion, what have you, these other things that will make them have a higher level of resolve. I talk specifically about the lizards because typically it's not that hard to make them happy. Finding some meat was usually very easy, and then either purchasing jerky or skewers would raise the resolve up just long enough that I could actually progress my reputation fairly easily. Point being is that if you have the resources to raise your resolve up higher, I recommend doing so. That's something that I've been focusing on in my later matches. Also, by the way, you can favor a specific population here on this tab, but just be warned, all the other populations get pissed off at you. Just keep that in idea. So you may be getting towards the end game and you are coasting. You've stopped ripping through glades and you're just waiting for the finish. Don't. Keep opening glades, at least that's what I learned to do. What I would do early on is not prioritizing opening glades with my logging camps, and I would just sit. While I'm waiting for the finish line, of course, if you're about to get an order completed and that was your last one, okay, that doesn't really make sense to start anything new. Just finish and win. But even when I wasn't about to have a victory within the next few minutes, I would just be sitting, letting everything just kind of cook on its own. This is a bit more of my personal playstyle. As I've said before, I tend to play a little bit more passively and I need to play more aggressively. But in my later matches after I've played the game, I have found more success being aggressive, pressing the envelope and opening glades and keeping moving forward, not sitting still. Something I noticed early on in my building selection is not spending enough time reading the camps, specifically the advanced camps that we use to collect resource nodes. So my early build selection was usually atrocious a lot of the time. I wouldn't even consider getting an advanced camp because why would I need it? I don't have any resource nodes right here that I can collect, so what's the point? Well, I would go into a glade and there would be like 4 different large resources and I can't touch a single one of them. And to make matters worse, the random rolls or buildings would all be in development or in production, not gathering, as I've gotten higher and higher into reputation. I have essentially shot myself in the foot a bunch of times like this because I would not select the advanced camps early on. And I couldn't think about what was going to happen or what could potentially be on that map. If I did select an advanced camp, it would usually be based off of what I see in my first few glades. Okay, I saw some small snail nests here. There's a good chance that the bigger glades are going to have large resource packs like that. And in my earlier playthrough, I wouldn't think like that. I would just gather whichever one I thought was cool and then move on. Now, when I have a chance, I look at what I'm getting in the first couple of glades and then I take my best guess of what I think I will get down the line. And I promise you, this is one easy way that you can find more success in this game. Lastly, one of the biggest issues that I had to fix was actually kind of a simple one, and it's just moving my damn buildings. So you set out one of those fancy camps to gather, and now it's doing its thing, and now all the resources are gone. Do you just destroy the building? No, good gracious, no. This is a mistake that I made a bunch of times, but there's an easy way to remedy it. A lot of the time, if your camp is gathering resources and it runs out of its nodes, you can just move that camp mostly for free. I believe all of the camps are for free to other resource nodes all around without having to destroy the camp and then rebuild it. By destroying it and then rebuilding it over somewhere else, you are essentially wasting precious resources and manpower. Now, of course, this doesn't always apply. Sometimes you might find a meat node and you're working on it and then there's no other meat nodes available when that one's finished. Okay. That I can understand. But all in all, if you have the opportunity, move your camps. Don't destroy them and then rebuild them. You're going to waste time and resources. There are probably a ton more mistakes that I've made in my initial playthroughs, but these are the ones early on that I know I've learned from and have helped me greatly in my gameplay. If you do want to see my new player experience in Against the Storm, click this video here. Otherwise, stay caffeinated, folks.